Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everybody. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. It is June 25th, 2014. I'm your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. And today on the show, we're going to have, someone local as far as I'm concerned. I believe this is him on the board here, area code 215, which is my area code as well. I could have guessed he would be local when I found out that he works with Mark Passio, and he would be calling me on Mark Passio's Skype account. I've seen Mark Passio at a lot of rallies in the Philadelphia area, former Church of Satan member. I recommend watching his New Age presentation that exposes the New Age movement for the fraud that it is. It's 7 hours long on YouTube, totally worth watching. Also saw his other presentation on police being mocked through occult symbolism and such, and that's also worth watching. And Mark and Jay were both on the at the Free Your Mind conferences, and I think they were in the one in 2011, which I was not there, in Philadelphia, and also the 2013 one, which I was there for one day, but not the day that Mark or Jay were presenting. Well, actually, Jay did two presentations. We're going to get into that. He was a former mind control slave of the Illuminati, I believe, and was forced in the Church of Satan against his will. Mark Passio, by the way, is a former Church of Satan member turned whistleblower, and thought about killing two birds with one stone by having both Mark and Jay on, but I didn't think about that until too short notice before the show. So maybe Mark will come on the show some other time, and he can tell me everything that Jay won't tell me in this interview. But Jay, he's a fascinating guy. You can tell by the fact that he did two presentations at the Free Your Mind conference in 2013, and not just one like most people. Definitely worth listening to. We'll get into that. But first, I will spend the next 7 minutes or so covering news, courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at InfoWars. First article, UN gun confiscation program serves as model for gun bans in America. Anti-gun politicians are heavily influenced by the United Nations. Yeah, there's a statue outside the United Nations of a gun tied in a knot. It's so in-your-face obvious from that standpoint that the United Nations is anti-gun and wants to disarm everybody for the purpose of inflicting tyranny upon everybody. That's why the Second Amendment was put into the constitutions by the Founding Fathers, to prevent government from inflicting tyranny upon the common people. Well, they want to take care of that problem. They want to get rid of the Second Amendment, the New World Order's powers that be do, so they do despicable things like stage Sandy Hook and such to justify doing it. And next article, let's just move on here. Treason, America destroyed by design. Orchestrated collapse of America's borders, part of globalist plan to create a North American Union, just like they already created an African Union and a European Union, both of which are stepping stones to global totalitarian government, which we don't want, of course, and letting illegal immigrants into the country and opening the borders of Canada and Mexico. Not securing the borders is so in-your-face dead giveaway that they're trying to create some sort of a North American Union. And people should be asking, if they consider terrorism to be such a dangerous threat, why haven't they secured the borders yet? Well, because there is no threat of terrorism. The real terrorists, the tyrants in government, and the New World Order forces that control them. All right, moving on. UC professor, immigration influx is about re-education of society. Hamamoto warns amnesty will lead to creation of subservient underclass. Immigration is designed to impoverish society is probably a better way of putting it. Let the illegal immigrants come to this country so they can work for pennies at their jobs, work for a low salary, and all the other people who want to work minimum wage jobs at the very least, who or even need to make more than that just to make a living in this day and age where inflation runs rampant, they're going to lose their jobs. If it's not illegal immigrants taking the jobs, it might be machines that take the jobs. And strange, like normally when immigrants come to America, it's not like they just come in and not knowing what to expect. No, it's not like that. They have someone in America who will be happy to take care of them, and they knew someone, like a friend of a friend of a friend, who lived in America and told them this is the place to come. But it's not actually like that now. Many illegal immigrants don't have a place to stay when they come to America. It's just that the government is giving them a place to stay. They're letting illegal immigration happen. How sick. All right, next article. ISIS and al-Nusra emerge on Syria-Iraq border. Saudi-funded and U.S.-trained Caliphate Army gains 15,000 jihadist fighters. Yes, the U.S. government publicly runs al-Qaeda, and people still think the U.S. government did not stage 9/11. God, the human race is so lost in a trance. But anyway, in regards to this article, Let me start off by saying Andrew Bartzis, Akashic Records reader, and my favorite source on this show, has said that World War III cannot possibly happen. It isn't possible. Well, I don't really get the details of why. I don't really remember what he said, but I do remember him saying it's not possible. And, if an Akashic Records reader says it, it must be true. And so no matter how much they like to screw around with the Middle East of the world, which, by the way, has womb chakras, which are critical for giving birth to peace on Earth. That's why they have so many wars in the Middle East, to suppress the womb chakras of Mother Earth. And all this stuff about Iraq being invaded, being saved, so to speak, because it's being invaded by Al-Qaeda, which the U.S. government publicly runs. Yeah, it's all part of the suppression of the womb chakras and create a World War III and such. Well, World War III won't happen, but let's just keep them out of there for the sake of expanding the womb chakras so we can all ascend into higher consciousness. Okay? Could we do that, please? Wake up, sheeple. All right, next article. Oh, it's just an addendum to the first article. UN accelerates plan for global gun confiscation after collapse. They're UN hiring disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration officers. Yeah, why would they hire such despicable people? Because they want to run a despicable totalitarian government, and that's why they want to disarm us. I already said that, right. All right, next article. Overwhelming number of false matches to come from FBI biometric database. Iris scans, facial recognition technology not properly vetted, warns privacy groups. Okay, so I want to stress something here for privacy groups. It's not in your best interest to say things like, well, the technology is not good, it won't be able to do what it does. No, the best way to attack something like clear that this FBI match thing with DNA and such, and iris scans and facial recognition, it's not about keeping anybody safe. It's about tyranny. You spy on everyone, you can suppress their consciousness, they will behave differently, and you can more easily inflict tyranny upon them. And that's what the privacy advocates should be talking about, not whether or not this stuff actually works. I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of the New World Order technology that's supposed to keep us safe doesn't actually work, like the TSA body scanners, which are designed to irradiate you, and the underwear bomber was staged. Just ask Kurt Haskell, and you'll find out about that one. Those naked body scanners, they actually do cannot sometimes spot things like in your armpits and such, and that are on the side of your, or taped to the side of your like your abdomen. People have managed to sneak through those and assert that they don't work. And, maybe that is one of the few cases where the New World Order is a little incompetent. People say, well, they're competent enough to execute their global totalitarian plot. Well, yeah, they are, but in the end, they do goof in a lot of regards because maybe there's a lot of infighting and such, and you wouldn't expect them to be incompetent enough to make body scanners that don't work. Maybe they did that on purpose, made it so that they don't work. I don't know. God, the New World Orders, it makes the world so crazy. All right, next article. Federal court strikes down no-fly list is unconstitutional. Freedom to travel considered an unenumerated natural right. Oh, yeah, just watch Eddie Craig's masterpiece presentation, Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know, which proves that transportation laws only apply to commercial drivers. And if you're not a commercial driver, you can drive with no license, no insurance, no registration, and no license plate on your car because you're exercising your right to travel whenever you use your cars, bikes, watercraft, and flying machines for non-commercial purposes. And the court is once again making that clear, but the courts don't want you to know that the words vehicle, transportation, operate, driving, passenger, they have legal definitions, not standard English dictionary, but legal definitions, which are commerce specific, and the government has some authority to regulate commerce, and they don't want you to know that, but as long as they can keep that secret to everybody, well, it's not secret thanks to Eddie Craig's presentation called Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know, which you can find on the Alex Jones channel, but they count on you not knowing that, so if you ever use one of those words in court or don't object to them being used, they can say, aha, gotcha, now you're being charged with a crime because you admitted you were in commerce even though you weren't. So, all right, but anyway, one last article here. British police use fake town to prep for riots. Images show cops confronting angry mobs during social unrest. Yeah, we've seen this before. We've seen this happen before, where they've created towns to plan for things and prep for things. And David Knight, InfoWars reporter, and some sergeant guy did get arrested in some local town recently in America because they tried to go there, and even though the military guy showed his security clearance, it didn't make jack squat of a difference. So now the British police are doing the same thing, apparently. But anyway, let's get Jay Parker on. I believe this is him. Jay Parker, area code 215. Is this you? Hello?
Sorry about that, Andrew. Yes, it is.
Oh, all right, you are there. Glad to have you on. Well, I watched both of your presentations at the Free Your Mind 2013 conference. I wasn't there, but those videos were recently uploaded to YouTube a couple months ago. Watched all of them, and you did two presentations, unlike all the other people, as I explained there. Could you please tell us, like maybe in a sentence or two, what the first and the second presentations were all about, and then I'll start asking you some really serious questions about it.
Well, at the Free Your Mind Conference, which is a biannual conference held in Philadelphia, we've done two. We're going to do another one in 2015, if we're lucky enough to be here. And my first presentation at the Free Your Mind in 2011 was a general talk on what I had experienced in the growing up in an Illuminati family, and what I used to get myself out of the mind control. And then in 2013, I gave a talk. Basically, I was talking about the Abrahamic religions that are so corrupted that they're no longer tied into the Spirit of God. They're actually political and economic engines of control. And then the second presentation I gave in 2013 was a personal talk about what I had experienced growing up in Arden, Delaware. And I gave a description of my friends who I grew up with who were murdered by the cult. And that was the first time I openly in public talked about the four friends that I lost as a young adult.
Okay, you're an excellent primary source in regards to telling us what's going on within the Illuminati because you were there, you were under mind control and such. So this is one of the cases where I think it's in my best interest to shut up and let you talk. So, well, even though I say I'm going to give you the floor, I suppose maybe 45 minutes max is what I'd like to give you because I do have some other questions. But tell us, 45 minutes max you got the floor for that time, about your experiences within the Illuminati. Tell us what you think we should know about that. They'll enlighten us.
Well, Andrew, the story of the Illuminati just simply is the story of the diseased psychopaths in this world that have been here for thousands of years. People don't understand that psychopaths tend to travel together. They hang out together. They form organizations, and they have a criminal anti-life mentation. Basically, everyone but yourself is dirt and can be used, abused, and killed. And they're certainly that way due to the fact that they go through a horrific mind control program. So what I'm going to do, Andrew, for your listeners out there, is I'm going to go over a brief history, personal history, and then I'm going to talk about where they can get information and whose information out there on the Illuminati is trustworthy, accurate as far as what I experienced personally. And so I'm just going to start in with just briefly talking about my parents. My family, my father's side, joined the Illuminati in essentially 1720s. This is, over 50 years before Adam Weishaupt declared the Illuminati in Bavaria in 1776. The Illuminati, the true Illuminati, according to my father, these dark occultists, these pedophile, mind control, eugenicists, genetic manipulators, social engineers, these dark occult. I mean, when I was being groomed to be Illuminati, for the first 6 years of my life, 5 years I believe, but I was taken at least once a week to what I called the Church of Satan, which was a room that was behind the quote-unquote mayor of Arden, Delaware's art store. Buzz Ware was this man's name. He ran the cult back in the 60s and 50s. Children would be taken there at least once a week. When I lived in Arden, in the 60s and early 70s, 90% of the people there were dark occult, generational Satanists, Illuminati. And when you grow up in an Illuminati family, you are subjected to trauma-based mind control, which consists of raping, torture, and drugging and rituals that bend and warp the synaptic pathways of your mind. And when you're in a state of terror, your body chemistry is being manipulated. And when you keep manipulating a child into a state of terror, it keeps building up the R complex of the brain and shuts down the limbic system and shuts down the higher prefrontal cortex. And so you literally become a R-complex robot. This is the goal of these dark occultists, is to get people in the system to basically become brain damaged. And your synaptic pathways get so warped by this constant attack that children go through. And Fritz Springmeier has written an excellent book called How to Create an Undetectable Mind Control Slave. And Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler wrote this book over 10 years ago now. And I certify that this book is very accurate as far as some of the rituals and the reasons why they do this. People do not understand their own physiology. They do know in this society that for the first 6 years of your life, you are in a hypnagogic trance. And as your brainwave patterns move up another notch when you're 6, 7 years old, you start to come out of this hypnagogic trance, and you can start to differentiate the information your five senses is taking in, which is, of course, building up your processor in your brain, which, of course, is the subconscious. The subconscious runs 95% plus of your attitudes, belief systems, and information filtering that you'll do subconsciously in your adult life. So if your first 5 years of your life, you're being programmed because you're in a hypnagogic trance. You're literally in a kind of twilight hypnotic trance. And your mind and body are taking in as verbatim every source of information that's being thrown at it. So if your society is warped, if your family is warped, your subconscious is going to pick up that information and run with it until you learn the truth and come out of the mind control programming. The people ask me, why is the world like this? And basically, my mother said to me back in the 60s that 10% of the U.S. population is dark occult, is generational Satanist, Illuminati. Now, there are many different dark occult groups, okay? Some Masons are dark occult, some Masons aren't dark occult. But the thing, when people start doing research in this and they start seeing the Knights of Malta, they start seeing the Vatican, the bankers, all this different stuff, at the very top of the New World Order system are a group of probably only 8 families that are running the show. and really causing the decisions that are made on a global scale. Then there is, beneath that, a council of 13, where there are 12 families plus a seat for Lucifer. He sits in spirit form, I guess. And these 12 families actually run the country. So we have a situation in America, and people don't understand this, that roughly 34 million people are generational Satanists in America today. And most people who are Christians or who are spiritual, they think that the dark occult is an extreme minority, probably 1% of the population. But scientists who have done studies in psychopathy are saying that as far as people being born and birthing is a way of psychopaths being made, because if you have a hard birth, you can damage your medulla oblongata in the back of your brainstem, and you can actually become psychopathic with that damage. But the lessons that I learned growing up from being in cult and being raped and tortured, I was given the classic Anunnaki history of the world. And basically, from what we know today, from the research being done in South Africa and the work done by Sitchin and some of the other studiers of the ancient Sumerian texts, is basically we were a species of rudimentary hominins. I guess you could say we're not too dissimilar from Bigfoot. We were moving along naturally in our evolutionary path, and these beings came down, genetically altered the human race, and made it into what it is today, Homo sapien sapien. And this is a story I was told, that the Anunnaki, the reptilians, came, invaded Earth, and genetically altered our species, our natural Earth species, into what it is today. And their desire simply was to create a primitive worker, and that's why in the Akkadian language, the name for the human race is Lulu, which means primitive worker. And this is a story I remember my father talking to my mother about, and I've also found it in my research. I would tell people simply, if you want to know what's going on in the world, you just have to study history, because we live in a time where people are so programmed not to ask questions, not to critically think. So what you do is you have a downloading in the hypnagogic trance of the children of all the socialization, whether it's religious, cultural, their attitude towards money, whatever. It all gets programmed into the child in the first 6 years of their life. And then they run the program for the next generation. One of my favorite teachers right now, and someone I keep trying to turn people on to, is, of course, Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton is a microbiologist. He's a researcher, and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to the physical nature of how we think and how we work. He was working on stem cells back in the 1960s. So this guy was at the pinnacle of well-funded science. And basically what Lipton tells in his talks basically is we are epigenetic creatures. And attitude, energy, it means everything to us. Basically, where your head's at is where your life's going to manifest. And that's why the Illuminati spend millions and billions of dollars controlling the information that the human race has access to. There's an excellent book, and I'm going to be mentioning books in my talk for the next half hour and authors and stuff. So if you have a pen and pencil, definitely write these down, because I've spent the last 14 years of my life since I came out of mind control tracking down what happened to me, how it happened, and why. And I have some answers for people out there who are presently in cult, and for people who are just in the world today wondering what they can do to raise consciousness and hopefully stop the New World Order from getting their lockdown. The New World Order is a creation of the deep, dark occultists. Make no mistake about it. Like, you can pin it on the bankers and say the Rothschilds and Rockefellers are running this, and they're using their puppet, the UN. This is all true, but at the top of the pyramid, you will always find deep, dark occultists. And my recommendation to people is, we really, don't know how much longer this civilization we have is going to continue. Right now, if you really are aware, even in a small amount, you know that economically, you know that resources-wise, the economy structure, the resources, what's going on with the ecology, we are in a Ferrari going 150 miles an hour as a species headed to a concrete wall. And it could blow up on us tomorrow. It could blow up on us in 2 years. But one thing is certain, if you really take a look at these structures of economy, ecology, and where people's minds are at as far as this empire and war machine, we're in trouble right now. And the best thing I say to people right now is, you want to help, you want to do something, find an issue that you know is wrong and become active. Because with Fukushima, you're already radioactive, so you might as well get active. But the thing I want to say in my first 45 minutes here, Andrew, I'm going to go through, as I did, talking about some books where people can get better information, and talking about what they need to do to raise their own consciousness and deprogram from the New World Order mind control and matrix. Because just because you didn't grow up in a family where you were raped and tortured and subjected to satanic ritual to get in your head, okay? You live in a society which is totally engineered, and all forms of media are controlled. The fact that they built the internet and made the World Wide Web, and I'm saying they as in the owners of this planet, there are 80 people, okay, that own one half of the planet. You can fit 80 people in a double-decker London bus, and they own one half of the land and the wealth of the planet. Now, I don't know about you, but there's 7 billion people here, and you've got 80 people with half the planet's wealth. And when you really get down to it, and you say, okay, you look at some studies, 6% of the world's population, okay, control 90% of the land and resources of the world. They are the owners, this 6% of society. Well, that means the other 90% of the human race is fighting over, the other 94% of the human race, okay? Not the 6% owners of 90% of the earth and the land and the resources. The other 94% of the human race has to fight over 10% of the resources. 90% of the resources of this planet are owned and controlled by 6% of the population. This is a system of such unfairness, disparity between, the haves and have-nots. I mean, the vast majority of the human race is living in a mud hut with no electricity, no education, and literally scraping a living off the rocks of the land. And we're at a point now where those people that have a chance to get information and become aware and raise their consciousness, it's very important for them to do that. And I'm going to get into that right now. Every human being, subconsciously and spiritually, is tied together in a network. And people have called this the field, the quantum field, but we are all broadcasting and receiving information as a collective, in the collective unconsciousness. And this is something my mother talked about, and she's an Illuminati witch that traces her dark occult history all the way back 3,000 years to the Amalekite people spoken of in the Bible. And what I'm saying to people out there is there's nothing wrong, because it's a New Age fallacy, there's nothing wrong with becoming aware of the corruption in the world today. The unfairness, the corporate oligarchs, there's nothing wrong with becoming totally knowledgeable about 9/11, that it was a false flag, about all the corruption, the chemtrails, the geoengineering that's killing the planet. There are a ton of negative issues out there you need to know about, especially when it comes to your health. The geoengineering and chemtrails, it doesn't look good for the human race. The GMO food is definitely a biological weapon, and it's out to destroy agriculture. And these are things you need to study about. I would recommend the first thing you do when you go down the rabbit hole and start to become aware of reality is take a deep breath and say to yourself, I'm not the savior. Just say to yourself, it's not on me to save the human race. And realize that, because you're not the savior. You're one part of this puzzle, but you have a part to play. Don't shirk your responsibility in trying to turn the ship of the world around, because it's a huge job. As Allen Ginsberg said very succinctly, it's a giant, giant mountain of shit. But if each person deals with their own individual spoonful, we can take care of these problems. And that's the truth. It's all about each one of us becoming individually responsible and starting to make decisions based on natural law and based on doing no harm. But number one recommendation, if you want to know about the deep inner workings of mind control, is to read the books by Fritz Springmeier, which of course would be How to Create an Undetectable Mind Control Slave. He wrote this with Cisco Wheeler. You can find it on the web for free. Fritz Springmeier, How to Create an Undetectable Mind Control Slave. And just see what these 10% of dark occultists put their children through. I mean, I was buried alive. I was involved in being present during axe murdering. I was raped and gang raped and tortured with cattle prods and car batteries. And we're talking about being 3 years old and having to put up with this day after day, week after week. And talk about, going down a dark hole. When I was 6 years old, they raped my best friend, and he died of sepsis several days later. That's when I threw in the towel And I went to a neighbor down the street because not everyone in Arden, Delaware is cult. When I lived there, it was 90% Illuminati, dark occult. But they like to keep, 10% around, as my mom said, to have a little flavor of normalcy. And there was a man down the street who was a Christian. And when they killed my best friend, when I was 6 years old, I went to that man and I told him everything I was experiencing from the cult in Arden. And he went to the police, Andrew, and the police said to him, "Oh, we know what's going on in Arden, but we can't do anything about it." And the reason I bring up that story about a man going to the police and saying, I have a witness to a child who was raped and went septic and died, and there's a lot more bodies buried in the woods, and I think you really ought to know what's going on there. And the police turned to this man and said, "Oh, we know exactly what's happening there. We're not getting involved." And you say to yourself, well, how can that be? The police are there to serve and protect. The police have been under the control of the Illuminati in America, for years. Back in the 1930s in Delaware, the police tried to shut down the pedophile cult of the Marquis of Hell in Arden, Delaware. And immediately 3 police were killed. And then the cult got word to the police, "Do you want some more?" And the police said, "No, we're done." And since the 1930s, the police have not done anything about the cult in Arden, Delaware. And they're not going to. Because you have to understand, the owners of this place, the owners of America, the owners of the banking system, the owners of the energy system, the owners of your politicians, these owners are dark occult, and they control the entire board. Now, you can sit there and say, well, how can you, Jay, and other whistleblowers like Kathy O'Brien and some of the other people that have gone through this satanic ritual abuse, how can you go out and speak publicly about it? Well, there's been a change in the last several years relating to what's going on in the nature of reality. The dark occult minions were always told, and I heard this growing up in Arden, that once the New World Order got put into place, once the Satanists had everything locked down and they were in complete control of the levers of power in America, then the minions that helped bring this in, the rank and file, 34 million Americans who are satanic ritual abusers, they would be getting paid. They would be living like princes in this new corrupt society. And we can see already the start from the New World Order being in power in the United States, that there's 2 sets of laws. One for someone who's in the big club and another set of laws for someone who's not. But in talking about Satanism, I could talk for 3-4 hours about different rituals I've been through, Andrew. Being tortured with a cattle prod, watching animals be eviscerated, watching human beings be eviscerated. It's ugly, ugly stuff. And, I've done 3 radio shows with Mark Passio on whatonearthishappening.com. And those 3 radio shows, if you want to hear about the gore, guts, and bestiality, go to podcast number 17 on whatonearthishappening.com, and I lay out some of the horrific sexual and physical abuse. I can remember being locked in a cage for days. They break you. And as I used to say to my friend Mark Passio, when you're in a torture session with you, when you say, "Uncle, that's when the torture really begins. These are sick, mind-controlled, programmed individuals who generationally do this to each member of their family. And this is how the system perpetuates itself, because in the first 5-6 years of life, you're in a complete download mode in your consciousness, and you cannot differentiate any information you're being told. And all I can say is, one of the things I tell these people who are involved in the Illuminati generational Satanist network is take a look at what's going on. Because my parents told me in 1963 that the elite, and we're talking the 80 people on that double-decker bus that own half the planet, okay? We're talking a real small club. We're talking dark Venetian occultists and the tops of the banking families. They would betray the rank and file generational Satanists. And what have we seen since the 50 years since my parents saying that to me? We have seen fluoride put in the water. We have seen the advent of GMO poisonous food. We have seen the chemicals in all the processed food. Most of it, some form of neurotoxin. I mean, look at the aspartame. It's a neurotoxin. Look at the high fructose corn syrup made from GMO corn. Half of it has mercury in it, and it's a killer to your body. Look at the geoengineering so that they can control the weather worldwide. They are spraying 20 million tons of barium, aluminum, strontium. They're spraying biological cancer cells. They're spraying a genetically created new life form that causes Morgellons disease. We don't even know what's going to happen with that in the future. But one thing we do know is that every plant and animal that's alive today in the world has that new form of life that was created and causes Morgellons disease. The human race is in real trouble. Because of the geoengineering, so that they control the weather and they can use HAARP to manipulate the weather, they've been spraying 20 million tons of nanoparticulate heavy metals each year. But there's one major problem with the spraying of these heavy metals to make the sky more conductive and allow HAARP to bend the jet stream and control the weather. It also tears apart the ozone layer. So as they've been spraying, they're tearing apart the ozone layer. And we're in a situation now where 40% of the ozone layer is now gone. And as I had an interview with Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org, a website that I consider the #1 website for true information about what's going on in the environment and with geoengineering and chemtrailing. Geoengineeringwatch.org has UV meters that are picking up not only our normal UVA, but UVB and UVC. UVC is supposed to be stopped at 100,000 feet. It's now getting to the surface. UVB is now 1,200% greater than what scientists were talking about years ago. So we're having a massive increase in the intensity of the radiation that's getting to the surface. And that's why I'm saying this to everybody out there, that we don't have much time. We need to raise our consciousness. I mean, that's step number one, because we're all in this together. And to those that aren't under heavy mind control and can raise their consciousness and can broadcast into the field a broadcast of freedom, of resistance to tyranny, there's things you need to know about. When you study the dark occult and study the banking system and study what's happening with food and with the ecology, you say, well, Jay, a lot of this is really negative stuff, and I don't want to swim in a sea of sewage. Well, I agree. I don't want to swim in a sea of sewage either. But I put the truth, what actually is going on in the world, in my mind. It's not what I want to believe. It's not what I've been told to believe. It's actually what's based in reality. And this is what I call being on the center path. You're neither an abuser nor a victim. You've developed enough consciousness where you realize your goal in life is to learn and grow in consciousness and wisdom and natural law, and you every day is a learning experience. Now, I go around and I warn people with babies when I see them in the street about the vaccination program. The vaccination program is another eugenics program, and if you don't know what eugenics is, just Google it and start researching what the Nazis were into, because it's eugenics. It's where my tribe is going to live and your tribe is going to die. Eugenics is the system we're under right now. We are in a position right now as a human race where we have the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web was built for wiretapping and data mining the entire planet. But there's one thing that they didn't figure when they decided to make the worldwide wiretap, and that was that people would start doing shows on radio for free, would start doing blogs, and start talking about the corruption of the Illuminati. And word is getting out there, and people are waking up. So when you know about the truth, know about the corruption, you are broadcasting into the field, and when you talk to people, they can look you in the eye and they know that you know what's going on because you've done your homework. One of the most important things that people need to understand is on a health basis, we're being hammered, the human race is, on health issues. Our food is poisoned with pesticides. And also, the chemtrail chemicals are in our food also, ladies and gentlemen, and the biologicals that they spray. But from what I can tell, if you look at the talk in the dark occult, they have said for years that they want to get rid of roughly 80 to 90% of the human race. And they want to start over with a new world order and a controlled society where the corrupt elite will never have to worry about rebellion ever again. They've gotten to a place now where they are killing the ecology. The aluminum and barium is causing the soil to become more acidic. And that's causing seeds not to sprout. It's causing harvests to be a lot slower and lower. And once you mess with the big picture, once you mess with the ecology by using geoengineering, 40% of the protective ozone is gone. So now UV, B, and C are now getting into the environment. 50%, roughly, of the phytoplankton, which is the basis of the food chain in the ocean, are gone. 40, 50% now are gone to what should be in the ocean for the phytoplankton. When you start to have a collapse of the food chain, then, you're really looking for trouble. As Henry Kissinger once said, you control nations with oil, but you control people with food. We are in serious ecological problems ongoing right now. I don't really care whether the planet is headed for an ice age or whether the planet is headed for global warming. I don't care. What I care about is the more they spray, the weaker our ozone layer gets and more radiation gets in. And eventually, you're not going to be able to grow your crops. Already in California, right now, they are spraying walnut trees with a chemical to protect the leaves of the walnut trees from UV radiation. And all I'm saying to you people, go out, take a look at that nice bright white sun and that nice chemical sky out there and ask yourself how long we got, because we don't have long. Some scientists have said that if the spraying continues, life in the northern hemisphere will be gone completely in 16 years. And then where are we going? My parents told me in 1963, my Illuminati father and witch mother, 1963, that the rank and file Illuminati were going to be betrayed. And what did we get from them? We got fluoride in the water. We got a quadrupling of mercury-laced vaccines. Now we have autism that one scientist recently said that if the trend continues, 1 out of every 2 children born in America by 2025 will be autistic. And a lot of this has to do with the GMO, okay? And a lot of this has to do with the vaccines. But you put them both together, and it's hammered down on the human race. We can ignore reality, and we can go into our meditation area, and we can think good thoughts, and we can bliss ourselves out. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, I'm telling you right now, there's nothing wrong with getting your head in a good, positive frame of mind, spiritually and emotionally. But we've got to the point in the human race where we have to take action, and we have to teach our fellow man the truth about this controlled society, this slavery society, because you may not think of yourself as a slave, but when you're paying property tax on a home that you've bought, when you're forced to give your son or daughter in a draft for a war, you don't own yourself. You don't own your family. When the government or some institution can declare emergency and make you take a vaccine or an injection against your will, you're not free. You're in a slave system. And what the Illuminati system is, what the NWO is a slave system where a handful, maybe 200,000 people on the very top, run around and do whatever they want, while the rest of us live in squalor. We're in a place, Andrew, where, Fukushima, nothing really has been done there to clean that mess up. They have recently said that they're going to start letting loose with the tanks of radioactive water and just dumping it into the Pacific Ocean. All the tuna has been shown to be irradiated. There's just tons of radiation coming out there. I mean, we're talking about 3 meltdown reactors, not just one Chernobyl. We're talking 3 meltdown reactors with Fukushima. And every day, 300 tons of radioactive water go into the ocean. And then what else do we see going on since the Illuminati let my parents know 50 years ago that the human race was going to be betrayed? We have the BP oil disaster. And you may not think too much about the BP oil disaster. It certainly doesn't get much press. But if you do some research, you'll find that the fish in the Caribbean are all mutated now. The shrimp are mutated. The fish are mutated. I mean, the fishing industry people down there are pulling things out of the water they've never seen before. Millions of gallons of core exit were poured into the Gulf of Mexico. And you put core exit together with oil and you've got just a chemical, genetic mess. It's really, it's horrible what's happened down there. And it's not getting any better. And then there's another thing I wanted to talk about was 64 million tons of VX nerve gas and mustard gas was dumped by the United States military on the continental shelf on the East Coast and in certain parts of the Caribbean. 64 million tons of VX nerve gas and mustard gas. And when that mustard gas escapes the containers, it forms a gel that floats in the ocean for 5 years, killing everything that comes in contact with it. Now, I want to get back now because I've done my spiel about you're living on a dying planet. You really need to get off the couch, become a GMO activist, become a vaccine activist. Take one of the major things that's killing the human race right now. Be a peace activist. These wars are not fought for freedom. These wars are fought for the Illuminati oligarchs at the top of this pyramid. They are nothing but criminal actions. And if you still believe that there's a political party like the Democrats or Republicans and all we have to do is change our dirty underwear every 4 years and it'll get better, you're just not realizing what reality is. One of the things I grew up with my parents in the cult was an understanding that the elite and the Illuminati control this world. And you sit there and say, well, how can so few people control so many people? If you have 10% of society that is determined to take the leverage power, is determined like a mafia to take control of everything, they're going to infiltrate and they're going to take control because they have funding. Now, people ask, we in America just spent, 40 years fighting the Cold War against those dirty commies. Well, there's a book by an author by the name of Anthony Sutton. He's a Yale scholar. And the book is called Wall Street and the Bolsheviks. Wall Street funded communism in Russia. Wall Street created communism in Russia. And you say, well, why would Wall Street, who are capitalists, want communism? Because it's a controlled system, a controlled economy, a controlled central bank. For those in power who are above the law, it doesn't matter if it's a quote-unquote crony capitalist society or it's a communist society. The Illuminati only care about control. They don't care about labels. If you look at, let's say, the Nazis compared to the Russian Soviet system, each had a central banking economic control mechanism. Each had a secret police. Each had controlled press. each had controlled religion. Okay? What I'm saying there is one supposedly is left-wing, the other right-wing. But when it comes down to the operational machine, they're almost identical. There's no difference whatsoever. And this is the political mentation you need to get. You need to see the bigger picture and look behind the curtain. But one of the most important books to read are the books by Anthony Sutton. And Wall Street and the Bolsheviks. And you'll see the whole story of how Wall Street backed Trotsky and Lenin and caused that revolution. They paid for it. And then Sutton also wrote an excellent book on Adolf Hitler. And it's called Hitler and Wall Street. And this is where you get into the Bush family and the Union Bank and all the other American Wall Street banks and firms that helped Hitler achieve and maintain power. When it comes to the Illuminati, they don't care about left or right. They don't care about anything but totalitarianism. And the few families at the top of the pyramid controlling this planet. But we're in trouble right now, Andrew. Our ecology is really getting hammered. The sun is, burning us literally with radiation. And if we don't stop the geoengineering and stop the GMO, physically, I don't think it looks very good for the human race in the near future.
So you don't believe that? Well, I'd like to give a little positive note there. In my interview with Alfred Weber, he talked about how he's done some research and communicated with some people who have talked about, and by the way, Unified Soul Franco de Nicola has also talked about the 2017 time frame as a time of great consciousness shift. But Alfred Weber said 2017 is a possible time of a great consciousness shift because benevolent extraterrestrials are actually abducting, for lack of a better phrase, indigo children, crystal children, star children, and such, and tampering with their DNA to prepare us for this consciousness shift. And Fukushima being a global extinction event, among other dastardly, dangerous, unpleasant things that you talked about in your 45-minute talk there, are the reason why we're supposed to have this consciousness shift. And the extraterrestrials, well, they realize, hey, we got to intervene or the human race is totally screwed. And, I guess that is a little reassuring, but I caution people you shouldn't really dwell on that and obsess about that, because if you think we're going to be saved by aliens who want to keep us from being fried by Fukushima and such, well, you'll lose touch with reality, and it's just going to make the Illuminati have an easier time controlling us, even if we do have that consciousness shift all of a sudden in 2017. But one thing I do want to talk about.
Something is happening. You're an aware person, so am I, and I'm definitely. I'm not taking any ET stuff off the board here, and I'm certainly not taking any major shift in consciousness off the board. I just gave a big, spewing out of. Basically, I'm crying out to your listeners saying, you got to wake up, you got to get involved. It's your life, it's your next generation's life. Everybody, let's get on board for the life train. Let's hop on board I'm a human being, you're a human being, let's work together,
Yeah, one thing you did say in your talk there that I want to discuss for a moment. You said the sun is frying us. Well, in my interview with John Lear last week, he talked about how the sun is nothing like what we're taught it's like. It's not nuclear fusion. Stars are actually powered by a universal web of electromagnetic consciousness energy, and that's the reason the corona is so much hotter than the surface, because the star's power comes from the outside. And some people, including Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz, has said, you can look at the sun any day, any time of the day you want. It will not hurt your eyes. The system tells you you that, but in reality, the sun emanates the electromagnetic spiritual consciousness energy, and it bypasses your physical and goes right to your brain to, among other things, activate your pineal gland. And some people have said sunburn is not as dangerous as we're led to believe it is. It's the suntan lotion that'll cause skin cancer. And well, I've been sun gazing a lot recently, even looking at the sun any time of day, and my vision is perfectly fine. I mean, there's a little yellow dot in my field of vision, but that's just my pineal gland activated. It's not me losing vision or anything. So do you really think the sun is harming us, or do you think maybe what's the deal with that?
Oh, no. If you want to know the truth about the sun, and this we could talk about the lies that are being talked about, and entire sciences are based upon lies. Like the sun is a electric sun. It is not an atomic model sun. Never has been, never will be. And you can go to a website called, it's going to slip in my mind right now. Boy. I'm looking at the guy's face in my mind, and I can't. Thunderbolts of the Gods. That's where you need to go. Thunderbolts of the Gods gives a lot of their website talks all about the electric universe. We live in a plasma universe, not an atomic universe. Plasma and electricity make up our universe, and that's Thunderbolts of the Gods. Thunderbolts of the Gods. The reason I said the sun is frying us is because we've lost 40% of our ozone, and we're not supposed to be subjected to UV, B, and C, and those rays now are getting down to the surface.
Yeah, but the question is that actually from the sun? Because if the sun is actually electromagnetic and not nuclear, then that means that the UV rays are not actually coming from the sun. They're actually coming from something else. The sun doesn't hurt us. It actually helps us. So you think maybe the science is a little mistaken on that one?
Well, I assumed that even though it's an electric sun, that the UV radiation was coming from the sun. But if it's some kind of cosmic radiation that I don't understand, that's possible. The thing that I'm just stressing with the talking about the geoengineering for the control of weather to make it a weapon for Big Daddy is simply that it's wrecking our ozone layer. And irregardless of the source of this radiation, I believe the science does seem to be pretty good that ozone layer shielded the planet's surface from these harmful radiation.
Yes, just want to quickly touch on, John Lear did say in my interview last week that the sun does not give heat, it gives the electromagnetic energy, and it's the Earth's atmosphere and consciousness filtering system that some people like to call a consciousness filtering system that causes the heat and everything else on planet Earth and the life to exist. And in fact, every planet has such a system. There's life everywhere on every planet because this is how it works. It's one of the many things NASA conceals from us. But I'd like to move on to some other subjects here. You talked about the Anunnaki, and you did refer to them as the reptilians. Well, there's a little bit of a debate there. Like David Icke has said that the Anunnaki and the reptilians are one and the same. No. The Anunnaki actually refers to a hodgepodge of extraterrestrials, different groups, different factions that are the children of a universal geneticist known as Anu. And the Anunnaki from Nibiru, and yes, according to Andrew Bartzis, Akashic Records reader Sitchin's first 3 books are very accurate. He screwed up his timelines in the ones after that, but for the most part, they were very accurate, except they didn't come here on a mission on their own mission. They were actually lured to Earth, and the goal was not to shield the hemisphere in Nibiru. It was to bring entities to Earth, and such. And the thing is, the Anunnaki and the reptilians interbred, so it's a mistake to say the Anunnaki are the reptilians. No, they interbred with the reptilians. But what I'm interested in knowing here is, the hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in regards to malevolent Illuminati forces, and it is extraterrestrial. It's been said that Zeta Reticuli Greys are at the bottom. Above that, you have a group of extraterrestrials, mostly Greys from Orion. Above that, you have the Alpha Draconis reptilians, which have branched off into clone reptilians that come from Hydra, Sirius B, and Orion. But it has been said by some people that the Anunnaki from Nibiru, which are a malevolent faction of the Anunnaki, are the ones at the very, very top of the Illuminati ladder of authority. Can you confirm that, or do you think maybe that's a mistake to say that?
No, that sounds pretty accurate. I mean, there's a lot of things, we can't know for sure, until this thing gets flipped over and we get to analyze it, post-mortem of the New World Order. The guy I talked about who ran the cult in Arden, Delaware, Buzz Ware was his name. My parents openly talk about his shape-shifting ability to become reptilian. And I have memories of being in the presence of your standard brown hooded reptilian from my childhood.
Oh, really? Tell us about that, please, because it's not very often you get to speak to someone who has had contact with a reptilian face-to-face. Tell us about that, because I've heard some in Satanic Rituals there is actually, like Arizona Wild or David Icke's Revelations of a Mother Goddess documentary, talked about how the reptilians basically stare a human to death during their satanic rituals, look at them, stare at them, and then some sort of a eye in the middle of the reptilian's forehead, which they say the Cyclops eye is a mimicry of this, a model of this. They can actually paralyze the human. Do you know anything about that? And tell us about your experience knowing the reptilians. Personally.
Well, I don't know how high up the ladder this guy was. He ran the cult in a village of 300 homes, but I can say this about him. My parents one time were talking to me, and they were very upset that they could not shapeshift into a reptilian, and they said to me, "We don't have enough of the corruption." And that's genetic corruption, and that genetic corruption, I believe, was placed into us. We were a simple race of hominins that got genetically altered, by these Anunnaki. But my father talked about the Anunnaki as simply being the people who conquered the earth in 8 minutes. And they've been running the show ever since. And then you look into the Nephilim, and, there are obviously several different layers of breeding going on, It would appear that we had our DNA mixed with some Anunnaki DNA, and then the Anunnaki actually, procreated with their creation, the, Homo sapien, and created another level, But as far as my memories of, being in the presence of the reptilian, they're more like snapshots, It's like I see him right before me, and I have yet to access deeper those memories. I mean, I could do some EFT on it and try to work them out. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, Andrew, was, everyone should be doing some form of subconscious reprogramming.
Okay, speaking of the subconscious, I do want to discuss that for a moment, because you said this is the subconscious is 95%, the conscious mind is 5%. Well, some other people assert no, the subconscious mind is 100%, because the subconscious is your connection to infinite consciousness, which is what you are, and the whole conscious mind is just a great big illusion. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree and say no, that's a wrong point of view of looking at it?
Well, I'm never going to be able to stop thinking about what my mother told me, that the number one thing, Andrew, that the Illuminati want to get after is the collective subconscious. That's the number one thing they want to program. They want to make sure that everybody gets the program of winners and losers, and we got to have war. You know what I mean?
Right.
They want everybody to get the government authority expert program shoved so deep in their head, it's ridiculous. But there is a change happening. And I want to mention this. I was told this when I was growing up, Andrew, that we think it's 2014 right now. They told me when I was growing up, when they were teaching me before I rebelled, that the calendar's 3 years off from what we think it is. And so it's my personal thinking is it's actually 2011 right now.
You think so? Well, it's funny you mention that because Andrew Bartzis did say that on December 21st, 2012, that was the day where the first time in history where every human on planet Earth got to experience a brief moment of universal dream time, where in that universal dream time state they had the chance to decide whether they're going to be an activist and do something to fight for freedom, or whether they're going to want to be a sheeple, for lack of a better phrase, and do nothing about it. That seems to go against the idea that our calendar is off, which other people like Richard Hoagland have talked about, how the calendar is off. I guess I might as well let you plead your case on that, and whether you agree or disagree with the claim that our calendar is off.
I'm simply stating that one of the biggest things that the Illuminati do is study cycles of nature, physiology. I mean, the Herbert Hoover Institute, formed by the former president back in the 20s and 30s. All they do is study the cycles of time. They study how, they want a heads up on where consciousness is going before it goes there. And all I can say about the, being told that the clock is 3 years off is it makes me wonder that, did we really, hit the Mayan end time, or is it really a year away from now? Just saying.
Yeah, just saying too. We could debate this all day. Time is an illusion. Timelines are no longer relevant. It's all human consciousness. That's what matters now. So let's get active. But one thing I do want to briefly touch on about all of your trouble involving being beaten up and assaulted when you were a kid, and how other people have had that, and it's reprogrammed them. I mean, as someone who's experienced that, I just want to bring up the subject of spanking children, because it is said that a fundamental aspect of mammals is that if they're young, ever misbehave, in order to make it clear that, no, you should have done that, you made a bad choice, it might come back to haunt you, it's perfectly normal for the parents of that mammal child to cause some sort of pain or harm, like a seal, like whenever the baby seals go off over the edge and are about to fall into the ocean over the ice. If that ever happens, the mother or the father, after they save them, they will bite the neck of the kid in order to make it clear to them, you shouldn't be doing this, and I'm biting you because I care about you and I don't want you to kill yourself. And it's basically, I guess, the same thing with humans spanking their children. So as someone who's been was somewhat brainwashed as a kid because you were assaulted, do you think spanking children is a good or bad idea?
Well, if you're so far removed from your child that you have to resort to physical abuse to get through to them, you're not doing a very good job. That's all I have to say. I mean, a tap on the ass, I don't know. I mean, possibly, but, children, if they are not vaccinated, if they're not fed poison GMO food, if they're not sat down in front of a goddamn mind control subliminal television, if children are actually raised in a true family unit, I don't think, I know some parents, they say they've never hit their kids because now they grabbed a hold of them, sat them down, and, gotten in their face and disciplined them about certain things, but they've never had to physically, hit them. So, I don't know.
Well,
people say it's okay to hit, and I'm like, I don't see that you need to hit, but that's my personal view.
Okay, I can understand why you'd be against it because of what you've been through, but it is a fundamental aspect.
I'm talking about getting cattle prodded in the face.
Right. That's even worse. Right. But speaking of harming kids,
that happened one time because I told the cult leader he was a bad person.
And that's your punishment. How disgusting. But speaking of disgusting, the Illuminati kidnapping children. I remember ET contactee Alex Collier in that groundbreaking 1994 interview he did where he talked about reptilian aliens and all sorts of other things that were prominent that are being discussed nowadays long before David Icke and other people in that field of research even came along. One thing he said he really hated talking about was the abuse that children had to go through, and he talked about how many of the children that are kidnapped, the reason they've gone missing for so long, they'll never see the light of day. They were kidnapped by someone who works for malevolent reptilian aliens who feed off the children's fear energy, and they want to get children to fear more than they want adults to fear, because the younger the person is, the more easily you can feed off them and the better the energy. So can you confirm that the vast majority of kidnapped children will never see the light of day because they've been kidnapped by people who give the kids to the reptilians to both kill them and scare the hell out of them?
Well, we have a massive pedophile network, Illuminati network, of white slavery for children, trafficking children for both abuse and slavery. I mean, 800,000 children go missing in America each year, and it's not even an issue in this country. 800,000 children go missing every year. I don't know what happens to the vast majority of them, but I would say to you that, okay, let's say, half, are swept up by the ETs or put into slave factories. I mean, it's a lot. There's no doubt in my mind that these reptilians eat children. I mean, none whatsoever.
Yes, and in regards to the world population being not what it is, because children that are being born will never see the light of day. I remember Andrew Bartzis once saying in a talk that the world population, it's not 7 billion. I brought that up because you did say it was 7 billion at some point during your 45-minute talk. It's actually, he said it's over 15 billion, and it's actually a lot more than that if you include the people living under the surface of the earth. So that kind of makes you wonder.
There are cities of aliens and humans under the earth that are vast. There's
Tell us
no
about
doubt
that. Tell us what you know. I'm interested in knowing.
I haven't been there. I'm a researcher like you that, I read people, blogs. I've looked at the work of Alex Collier. I mean, I think he's reputable. I personally, Andrew, something big is going to happen on this planet in the next couple of years. I mean, I don't know whether it's going to be for good or bad, but I know that if semi-awake people start to study the work of Bruce Lipton, start to get involved politically to protect the species and protect the planet, I mean, we could get through this mess. I personally think, when this whole house of cards falls, I mean, it's going to swing one way or another. Either we're going to go into totalitarian nightmare or we're going to be free.
Well, since you mentioned that, I'd like to point out that when I had George Kavaslis on my show, I remembered he once said it is impossible for the New World Order to fully succeed in their mission of global totalitarian government because on planet Earth, infinite love will always prevail. And I asked him, how can you confirm that? Well, he gave an answer that a lot of people are going to not believe and dismiss as the words of a lunatic, but he asserts that he felt within his heart, soul essence that at its heart, soul level, planet Earth, Mother Earth, is a love-based planet, and that alone, even though the New World Order, there are times where it may come down hard on us and seem like it's taken over, the simple fact that Mother Earth is a love-based planet, its heart, soul, essence means that it will never take over, and one could make the argument that it'll be impossible for any malevolent alien race to take over any planet because, as Dolores Cannon said in one of her talks, fear is an illusion, infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. So I guess that's not necessarily true with planet Earth, and I can only hope that this may connect in some way to the consciousness shift that may happen in the 2017-2020 time frame. But would you be willing to agree that everything is love-based at some level and fear is an illusion?
Well, I have to say that they attack children. The Illuminati go after children because they're in a hypnagogic state. But from what I gather from my personal experience, you're closer to the event horizon, and you have less filtration from being on this planet. So spiritually and energetically, you're more in the flow with true consciousness and cosmic reality. And so there's a lot of power in that because you haven't convinced yourself that you're powerless. You haven't been programmed to be a, slave in this society. So they can tap into that energy of your soul and of your spirit, when you're young and you haven't been, programmed by this society. The thing to say that fear is an illusion, I don't know. I look. There's a lot of things that I think fear serves a correct thing. I mean, you should be afraid of certain things. You should be afraid to put your hand in the fire. You should be afraid of this, that, and the other thing when it relates, to a normal life. But when you talk about, fear being an illusion, once you start to do research as to what a human being really is and who you really are in consciousness, you're eternal. I mean, you're walking around in a spacesuit called your body, experiencing the earth. But once this goes, your consciousness is all you're going to have. And your consciousness cannot be destroyed. And if you don't understand that your consciousness is immortal and that, you're part of the one, then you can become a slave to all kinds of fear. I don't fear death anymore because I've done some homework to try to figure out who I am and what I am.
Yeah, and the New World Order, you said they want to capture the collective subconscious of humanity. I want to talk about collective consciousness for a moment because it has been said by some that if enough people on planet Earth were to realize their infinite consciousness and space and time are illusions and reality is holographic, we're all infinite, then if some magic number, I don't really know what percentage it may be, were to realize that, it would allow us to ascend into some higher consciousness. But what I'm interested for the purposes of this talk is determining how reality works from a collective consciousness standpoint, because it's been said that there are two matrices on planet Earth. There's the Saturn moon matrix, which the Illuminati use, where Saturn's holographic energy is broadcasted from Saturn from its crystalline rings, which are synthetic and crystalline, and the moon, which is artificial, amplifies that holographic energy down to Earth to put us in this matrix by suppressing the feminine energy and such. But there's also the collective consciousness matrix, which is what causes you to see a building when you look at a place where there's a building and everybody else, even if they're not with you, looks there, they'll see the same building. Well, that's collective consciousness. But when I had Andrew Bashago on my show, he elaborated on that by saying that the whole thing about Schrodinger's cat, where the cat in the box, whether or not it's dead or is alive, it's the sum of whether it's dead and alive. It has to do with whether or not there's an observer. Well, he told me that he rejects Schrodinger's cat. It's all bogus. That's not the way reality works. he talked about how reality is a certain way. There is no what is depending on the observer. It just is. And then when someone else gets involved by doing something or making an observation to affect something, not just making the observation but playing a role in what's going on, then that's, well, the way reality works. I mean, he probably would assert that because of his experience in time travel and timelines being affected by merging events from one timeline into another. But in regards to collective consciousness and whether or not Schrodinger's cat is real or false, what's your take on that whole thing?
Well, I look at collective consciousness as absolutely being the main driver of this reality that we as human beings experience. My mother told me that they are broadcasting from the moon, okay? So that whole Saturn matrix theory, to me, rings pretty true. And I was used to do remote viewing as a child of the soul catcher on the moon by the Illuminati. So
you were talk about that for a moment.
Well, there's a mile square box on the moon with some very large poles around it, like pyramidal poles, that basically, when you pass away and your soul tries to move out of here, that machine catches your soul and sends you back to Earth, in a reincarnated form. So
yeah, and that
soul catcher is the whole soul catcher thing is run by the Illuminati or not, I don't know. I mean, they were certainly trying to get me to get close to it in remote viewing and give them more information on it.
Yeah, and
but it's there.
Yeah, I can certainly believe it. The NSA has bases on the moon, and Alex Collier has talked about how Orion Greys are the ones who are at the top of the NSA ladder of authority, even though Draco Reptilians are at the top of the Illuminati ladder. Faction-wise, it's the Orion Greys that control the NSA, and they're the ones who have put the bases on the moon and are controlling them. But this is different. This is the box that you were talking about. But you said the whole thing about...
Very ancient,
Yes.
Probably there as long as the moon's been there.
Yes, but I want to talk about the whole thing about Saturn symbolism because you said you do subscribe to the idea of the Saturn moon matrix being real. It is starting to gain some popularity. Some people think it's too crazy to believe, but I think there is definitely something to it. Norman Bergrun is another researcher who's talked about that. But David Icke has come out recently, especially in recent times, where he's talked about how a lot of the things that we thought was sun symbolism is actually Saturn symbolism, and he's talked about how many years ago, before the Draconian Empire, the reptilians took over planet Earth and caused the fall of Atlantis. Saturn was a lot closer to Earth, and at some point, material inside Saturn exploded and caused a luminous crescent around the planet. Whenever you see that, that's actually Saturn symbolism and not other things like Venus symbolism, as people originally thought. As someone who's had experience within the Illuminati, can you confirm that a lot of the symbolism is Saturn symbolism, including what we originally thought was sun symbolism?
Oh, absolutely. There's a hat that's very popular with state police. It has a really flat, huge brim that almost looks like the rings of Saturn. I mean, they have this silly conical cap on their head, and then they have this big circular brim that's straight. And I remember talking to my mother and just what a weird hat that was. And I said, why are they wearing that hat? And she said, that's us. Just like when I asked, when we were driving to the regular church one time, and I looked at the sign and I said, what's Trinity? And my mother said, that's us. That's Illuminati. And, so much of what we've been handed down generation after generation has been corrupted and co-opted by the Illuminati, that, you kind of wonder, where did it actually come from, and did it actually have a positive connotation at one point? Well, one thing is true. John Lash talks about in his talks is that the solar system is not the same as it used to be, and Thunderbolts of the Gods talk about this, that the solar system of ancient days, and we're talking about 7,000 BC, is different than the one we have now, that there was a cataclysm, and that Saturn, Jupiter, a bunch of other planets had to move around and readjust and form new orbits. But there is a video by Thunderbolts of the Gods, and what's that researcher's name? David Talbot. David Talbot, talks about when Saturn was the first sun that we had, and he's got a film on YouTube called Alien Sky or something like that. But just look up David Talbot, and look at his information on the electric universe and on how the solar system used to be. And we're talking about heavy-duty scientists that have come up with this. But the thing I'd like to say is, when you talk about the Anunnaki destroying Atlantis, my father and his other warlocks in the cult used to refer to themselves as Atlantean warlocks. So if you think that Atlantis was a place of sunshine and happiness, I know Atlantis is real. My parents believed in it. If you look at the history of the world, it's obvious, they messed around with something and blew themselves up and destroyed that society.
Right.
And then there's the
Keep talking. Go ahead, keep talking.
And then there's the cataclysm at 9600 BC that's written about by Allen and Delaire. Have you read any of their books?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a debate as to what caused the cataclysm. Since you mentioned it, maybe a lot of people have asserted that it was a supernova that caused that cataclysm, but other people have asserted the cataclysm actually happened sooner in our history than that time period that you mentioned, the 9500 BC period, and some people have asserted that it was actually caused by a flyby of Nibiru. Remember what I said earlier about Andrew Bartz saying Sitchin's first 3 books are very accurate. It wasn't a supernova. It was actually Nibiru. And by the way, Sitchin was not a disinformation agent of the Illuminati. That was implanted into our reality by timeline watchers who didn't want us to know that Sitchin was accurate. So says Andrew Bartz. So can you confirm that it was a supernova and not a Nibiru flyby or something else like that?
Oh, well, I can't confirm what it was. I was not told in the Illuminati history as a child what actually it was. But the fact that it happened and it wrecked the planet, they're well aware of it. And this cataclysm, and we on this planet have been through several cataclysms. It's not just the one at 9600 BC. And this has caused really trauma to the psyche of the human race. And this is something, that's why I talk about, getting involved, looking at Bruce Lipton's work, getting involved with doing EFT, emotional freedom technique, and working on your consciousness with EFT and reprogramming your subconscious. Take out the trash. Take out your social engineering garbage, people, and start to develop a consciousness based on ethics and natural law, like Mark Passio teaches, and, start to think and be free in your mind and heart, and it will spread like a wildfire. There are conscious entities, I believe, we were always told in the Illuminati growing up that there are multiple dimensions. And You know, I certainly believe from talking to people in my life that, you know, occasionally beings from other dimensions have done things to try to help the human race. But now the human race is ecologically, financially, you know, spiritually, mentally, we're in trouble. You cannot have 1 in 50 children being born in America who are autistic. You really need to stop shooting and injecting into your babies aluminum, mercury, squalene, adjuvants. You have to stand up and put this science down. It's nothing but the big pharma corporations making patients for the medical system for a lifetime. It's not about keeping you safe. These vaccinations are nothing but making business.
Right.
So,
right. By the way, we have 18 and a half minutes left. We might as well finish on this topic. You mentioned there are 8 families at the top of the ladder of authority and 12 families below that. Fritz Springmeier, in his book Bloodlines of the Illuminati, he talks about there being 13 Illuminati families, but he actually puts more than 13, like a couple of that he felt are significant enough to talk about, like the Reynolds family. He talked about the Rothschild being the most powerful. The Lee family has a lot of influence in the Eastern world, like Asia, China, Japan, and such. And, of course, the DuPont family, I'm sure you're familiar with that because, for all intents and purposes, they own the state of Delaware. But can you name the 8 families at the top by name and then name the 12 families below that by name, and also tell us how the Vatican plays a role in these 20 families, 8 of which are at the top?
No, I couldn't. That information's not given to, you know, the
That's
dredges.
Right.
You know, the 34 million mind-controlled, you know, generational Satanists in America, they are poisoning the energetic field by raping and torturing children. Their job is to feed the evil and to feed the demons, you know, energetically. And this energy that's poured into our energetic field of torture, rape, abuse, murder, this energy of war, this energy of a war against the consciousness of the goddess and against the consciousness of natural law human beings, okay? That's what it's a war to these people. They want their side to win. I don't know what they're going to win, but I can tell you, you know, from my experiences coming out of mind control and learning what I've learned, Andrew, that I believe in the next couple of years the human race is either going to have to put up or shut up. And we need every person that we can get to do the research, to know about the evil, but also to know about the good so we can teach people how to take care of themselves in this dangerous world. There are things like cannabis oil that can cure cancer that are being suppressed by these Illuminati pharmaceutical companies. 500,000 people a year die in America alone due to cancer. Yet, cannabis oil, 95% pure cannabis oil, cures cancer. And as Rick Simpson says, a proponent of indica cannabis oil treatment for cancer, if this was brought out into commercial manufacture, you know, of the marijuana indica plant, and the oil was made, you know, in a commercially viable way, it would cost $100 to cure someone of cancer with the oil. And it costs $500,000 to take chemo.
Yeah, we don't have to, shouldn't have to deal with all that suppression of medical technology. Dr. Reif, also a very significant figure in suppression of medical science. He invented a way to use resonance to kill diseases like cancer and viruses, and they went through a lot of trouble to shut him up and make sure his technology never got out there. But I guess one thing we still have time to talk about, by the way, we have 14 and a half minutes. Might as well talk about religion, because you talked about that in your presentations. It has been said that the Vatican is the most powerful organization in regards to affecting us at a spiritual level. Well, I guess the sacred geometry could be said to be more powerful than the Vatican in that regard, but it is a satanic cult which masquerades as a Catholic organization, and I'm guessing the only reason they masquerade as Catholic is because Christianity is the world's most popular religion. If it had been another religion, they'd masquerade as that. But in regards to religions being a bad idea to take up, and by the way, it has been said that Buddhism is the religion that is the most accurate, but even they screwed up at some level, and of course the New Age movement was designed to catch all the people who thought that who saw through the illusion that is religion. But since you did a presentation on that, I'll give you 13 and a half minutes to discuss this. Tell us what you want to tell us about why religion is bad.
Well, as you get more enlightened and as you do more work on your own consciousness, you're going to get less and less inclined to just point a finger at somebody and say you're wrong. In my work and trying to teach people, I point at the thing that really isn't good, but I also point at other things that are good for you. I mean, in my talk in 2013 at the Free Your Mind conference, I gave a list of books that people need to read about the early church history of Christianity. When you study religions, all of them, you just see one of the things that the social engineers from the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations in London have done, and this is a billion-dollar funded Illuminati think tank that's been doing social engineering work on a massive scale for almost 100 years now. The Tavistock Institute for Human Relations was the group that brought the New Age movement into fruition. Basically, when you look at religion, in the ancient world, you had a belief system and you had a religion that was literally based on principles and ethics. Okay? It wasn't based primarily on salvationism. If you wanted to grow in life, you went to one of the ancient, Mithra temples. The ancient temple system in the classical world, around the quote-unquote time of Christ, was simply a system of teaching. So you could go there and learn whatever you wanted to learn. That's where the libraries were. That's where the scholars were. That's where the sages were. Now, when Christianity was formed by the Illuminati, and I know it's a horrible thing to say, especially a person like me that spent years in Christianity. But unfortunately, I studied myself, because my mother had told me when I was a kid that the Illuminati had invented Christianity, and I just looked at her with disdain, like, there's no way you could do that. But you read the books that are out now, and the books I recommend in my 2013 talk. And there's no doubt that Christianity was invented by the Illuminati. And I'm just more of a person that believes that if we're going to get out of this slavery system, it has to be done one person at a time, individual. You have to find the truth for yourself, but you also have to do a lot of study. You really have to go into history and look at it for what it really is. And that's why I recommend to people to, check out Red Ice Radio, Red Ice Creations and Red Ice Radio have some of the best authors in the world, and especially when it comes to religion. But, there's no doubt after I read probably six different books on it. I haven't really been focused on that for over a year now. I've kind of learned it, got my attitudes about it. But my 2013 talk has a list of books that you need to read. But I personally think John Lash, his book, Not in His Image, is one of the most staggering books ever written. Because we went from a system of spirituality in the West where you could believe anything you wanted to believe. It was a system of tolerance. And then we had the government merging with the church and forming the Holy Catholic Church. And then all of a sudden, if you didn't toe the church's line, your head was chopped off and all your property taken. And it's a sad world we live in. But the intimidation of, the status quo religions is still extremely powerful in the world today. I personally don't care what you want to believe, okay, as long as you can not be violent towards other people with differing opinions. But we have taught in religion for so long that everyone that doesn't think like you think in that religion is the devil. Then it's okay to kill, because you're only killing demons. You're not killing people. And, we're reaping the fruit of sowing those seeds of intolerance and ignorance. The main thing I want to say, at the end of the show, Andrew, is, people need to understand that America and the West have been totally taken over by the Illuminati New World Order. It's not something that's going to happen. It already has happened. They just haven't gotten to the point of total lockdown. And they need to disarm the American people in order to do that. All I have to say is they're going to have a lot of fun disarming Billy Bob and Bobby Joe. It's going to be ugly. And this is America, and even if we haven't been free since 1913, when the Federal Reserve banking system was created and the income tax was created, I mean, basically you could say that was the final death of the American Republic, because once the bankers got complete control of the economic system in America, nobody could tell them anything. And it's been that way. We taxpayers gave the banks $9 trillion worth of money in the crash of 2007, 2008. $9 trillion. But you're not going to be able to get that kind of money for jobs or health care or roads. Nope. But if you're a bank, you need $9 trillion. Uncle Sam's got you covered.
Right, government borrows to kingdom come, and they'll never pay it back. And Obama thinks we're so stupid he could say that raising the debt ceiling does not increase the debt. My God, that is such a ridiculous statement. It makes me want to cry. He's not the intelligent man that Andrew Basiago said that he knew when he was with Obama in the programs that he was in. But anyway, since you said the Illuminati created religion, we got 5 minutes. Might as well end on this. I'll give you 4.5 minutes to talk. Andrew Bartz, the Akashic Records reader, said that there was an entity known as Jesus. He was a human incarnate of the sun. He was a solar being, but his story was twisted by the Illuminati to make the religion we know as Christianity, and the same, to some extent, can be said with a lot of other religious figures. If not a human incarnate of the sun, they were an incarnate of some other higher entity of consciousness, and the Illuminati wrote a bogus story to suit their agenda. But what I'm interested in asking is, it's the Piso family. Well, this is what David Icke says in his books. It is the Piso family that was the one that wrote Christianity. Do you know anything about whether or not the Piso family did that?
Well, as far as, the understanding I got from my parents was, it's an Illuminati world. And if you don't control something, either through intimidation, violence, bribery, infiltration, and then steering it in another direction. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in America, okay, that isn't like, kind of like, what the heck is that? When they look at these neo-fascist mega churches. I mean, what's going on there? All these churches are preaching to their parishioners is prosperity theology. That if you're good with God, you should be rich. I mean, is that spirituality? That sounds more to me like Wall Street consumerism theology. Doesn't sound very spiritual to me. And people need to, take a step back. I recommend, the first thing you need to do to wake up your consciousness, get the latest book by David Icke, all 1,000 pages, 700 pages. I mean, he writes these massive works, but they're by and large fairly accurate, and they've been well researched, and it'll open your mind to a new possibility of reality.
It sure will. And keep talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, the reality that we experience here on Earth is a collective consciousness reality, because when you do research into the Illuminati and how they maintain control, nothing is more important to them than programming children. Get them young, fill them full of lies, and, hold them there. But now, with the understanding that we're epigenetic creatures and that we can reprogram ourselves using EFT, using Psi-K, go to Bruce Lipton's website, brucelipton.com, and look at his resources page. Study Bruce Lipton's work. I mean, his talk, Wisdom of Yourselves, it's a 10-hour lecture, is one of the greatest things I've ever come across in my lifetime. And every person should hear that talk to have a true understanding of the way that they grow up, how they become an R-complex dominated person, or a limbic system dominated person, or a higher consciousness person. And Wisdom of Yourselves goes into physiology. So good stuff.
Good stuff indeed. Well, I guess you might as well end the show now, and I guess I'll tell you the same thing I tell all my guests. Jay, great having you on, even though you're a fascinating guy who can be a great primary source because of your experiences. Fact of the matter is, on this show, one mission of this show is, aside from getting out the nature of reality, is also to give as many different people from many different walks of life a chance to come on my show to have some glory. So even though I would like to have you on again, don't expect a call from me in the future, because there's a lot of other fascinating individuals in this planet Earth living in this matrix with me who deserve some glory on my show. And by the way, with that being said, Mark Passio, let him know if he wants to come on my show. I'd love to have him on. I don't have an opening until around late October, but if he wants to come on, he's more than welcome to do so. So I guess you might as well fill him in on that if you want. You were about to say
one thing in closing. I'm going to say is that my parents openly talked in front of us, and I've gone through an Illuminati ritual where I was bounced out of this holographic matrix we're in. And, I saw these 3 blue pyramids, and, it was the machine that our consciousnesses are attached to right at this moment. And they would say to us openly, Andrew, this isn't real. This is, quote unquote, like the Matrix. This Matrix is run on consciousness. So what's your heart and mind, where your head's at and where your heart's at, is going into the field, and then the field is giving you that reality back at you. So we need to raise consciousness. That's why the Illuminati's freaking out so much, is because We're at the point now.
15 seconds. 15 seconds.
Where reality is coming up. They want to clamp down because it's the end of their time, if we so desire.
I hope you're right on that one, Jay. Well, I guess I might as well bid you good day. I hope you enjoyed giving out the nature of reality to my audience.
All right.
Take care now.
I'll talk to you again, Drew. Thanks again.
Later. Bye. Well, folks, next week will be Jim Fetzer. We'll be talking about 9/11, JFK conspiracy, the Sandy Hook, and other things, and exposing them to the frauds that they are. So without further ado, Jim Fetzer next week. Namaste, everybody. Take care.